Good evening, everybody. That's nice. We'll make a start. And I'd like to start off by welcoming some members and who are new, and some of you who are not here for the first time on my impression. So, this is the Sefton Council's Overview and Scrutiny Committee. My name is Judy Hartman. I'm the chair. We'll go around in a moment and introduce ourselves. Can I remind all members and officers and members of the public who are presenting us with petitions to use the microphone when they're addressing the committee. We're in this room to give us more room, but it is a bit more difficult to hear, so we'll try to remember to use the mic. Can I also remind members of the public that you are permitted to record this meeting, but out of courtesy for others, can I please ask if there is anybody who's recording it? You are recording it?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you need the details of anybody? No. Okay, thank you. Just be aware, everybody, that what you're saying is being recorded. Can I also take this opportunity to welcome Michelle Ravey, who's the Diocesan Schools Officer, who's temporarily appointed to replace Joe McCarthy as the Archdiocese Co-opted Member. And I'd also like to mention someone who's here observing us. It's Mandy Williams, is that right? Who's the new Assistant Director for Children's Services in the Early Help section. So very many welcomes to you, Mandy. So we're going to begin the meeting with brief introductions to members and officers. As I said, I'm Judy Hartman, and I'm a ward councillor for the Sudell ward, and I'm the chair of this meeting. And I'm going to start on this side, and we'll go around this way, and then we'll go up the other way.
Laura Bootle, Democratic Services Officer.
Debbie Campbell, Democratic Services Manager.
David McCullough, the Council's Chief Legal and Democratic Officer.
Leo Evans, Councillor for Cambridge Ward.
Tony Bruff, Ainsdale Ward.
Sandra Kane, Independent Advisory Member.
Michelle Ravey, representing Liverpool Archdiocese.
Gemma Armour, PDR.
Maurice Burns, Sefton Health Watch.
Danny Burns, Councillor for Molyneux Ward.
Carol Richards, Councillor for Harrington Ward and Formby.
Chris Page, Councillor for Ravenmells Ward, Formby.
Christine Howard, Councillor in Blundell Sands Ward.
Councillor Tom Spring for Nevis and Oran Ward.
Diane Rothgoley, Member for Education.
Barry Doyle, a Member for Social Care.
Oh, I'm Eleanor Bolton, I'm Assistant Director for Integrated Commissioning at Sefton Council.
Hi, I'm Joe Bynum, I'm the Assistant Director for Safeguarding and Quality Assurance.
Liz Dodd, Executive Director of Children's Services in Sefton.
And Mandy Williams, Assistant Director, Health and Protection.
Natasha Carlin, Councillor for Blundell Sands, Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank Thank you all very much. And you have all remembered, but just remember to switch off your mics when you've finished using them. Thanks. Is there anybody who wishes to offer apologies for any colleagues? And I'd like to give apologies on behalf of Cheryl Swainbank, whose husband has unfortunately been taken ill and isn't able to join us today.
I've had apologies for Councillor Prendergast, and we've got Councillor Buck in attendance as substitute.
Welcome, Councillor Buck. Okay, if members wish to disclose any disclosable pecuniary interests or personal interests in respect of any items on the agenda, would they please do so now? Okay, item number 3, minutes of the previous meeting. The minutes of the previous meeting, held on the 26th of September 2023, are submitted for approval. Is it the committee's decision that the minutes are agreed as a correct record? Agreed. Thank you. Item number 4, we have the first of 2 petitions. This is a petition regarding education, health and safety for 16 to 25-year-olds. And we have Ms. Rasheen Dawn present tonight to present the petition and say a few words. So Ms. Dormer, please can you come to the table?
Thank you. For most adolescents, moving into adulthood is a natural progression, and the move from school to a job or to further education is an expected rite of passage. However, the 770 vulnerable young people aged 16 to 25 with EHCPs in Sefton are not afforded this opportunity. Having already been failed since 2016 throughout their secondary education, they are now being failed again with the ineffective arrangements between education, health and social care. This impacts their transition from school to post-16 provision and to adult life, and will undoubtedly have consequences for their futures, as well as the future of our economy and society. You on this committee are in the privileged position of having a choice and being able to make a change for these young people and put a stop to this inequality. Despite a requirement that all EHCP reviews from Year 9 onwards include discussions on post-16, 94% of our parents surveyed stated they had not received information about the full range of options. 100% of those surveyed said they were not clear on who should be providing what and when post-16. For example, there's a clinical lead for SEND in Alderhay for under 16s who ensures accurate health information is provided for the EHCPs, but once aged over 16, there's no one in this position. There's a lack of transparent information. Our lived experience is that there is no accountability. These young people with EHCPs are slipping through the cracks when moving from children to adult services, with no named professional taking responsibility for them. 16 to 18-year-olds are deemed too old for children's services and too young for adult services. And then when they're transferred to adult services, they become invisible as they join the bottom of waiting lists, so reports are not provided for statutory reviews. Each service blames the other for the delays in provision, but with just 2 post-16 transition workers and 8 SEND caseworkers, these vulnerable people become lost in the system. This is unacceptable. These young people do still exist, so by having named people responsible for those sectors, a light can be shone in those areas. The Children and Families Act extended the statutory framework of support to include young people with SEN up to the age of 25, and this cohort of 16 to 25 still have legally enforceable EHCPs, and so should still be supported to achieve the best outcomes. However, 100% of our parents surveyed feel Sefton do not have high aspirations because of consistent and persistent statutory failures. The failure to complete annual reviews, the failure to alter plans in a timely fashion, the failure to secure provision detailed in EHCPs, the failure to provide exam centres for external exams post-16. These actions do not help these young people step out of the SEND system ready to lead a fulfilling adult life. Despite over a third of our EHCP population being 16 to 25, there is very little reported data on this cohort. What actually happens after year 11? There are increasing numbers of young people receiving no provision from their EHCPs and their need status being masked. How many of these are post-16? In the recent Joint Commissioning Strategy report, there was no mention of the number of annual reviews completed for the post-16 transition phase. Only the appalling statistic that last year 1,426 people didn't have any annual reviews. By having a regular agenda item on this cohort, the committee can act as a critical friend and ask these pertinent questions. All of the current 2,500 Sefton children with maintained EHC plans will grow up and enter the adult world. It's no good leaving the problems facing the college system and adult health and social care systems unaddressed. Parents were left demoralised after visiting the local offer event last week, as stall after stall apologised as there was no commission support for post-19, which puts pressure on aged parents and leaves families socially isolated and emotionally battered. Their needs do not disappear once the young person becomes 18. How many more generations must pass through this under-prioritised part of the system before these young people get the attention they need and deserve? The 325 members of Voice of the Families believe by making the EHCP 16 to 25 a regular feature, having a designated member responsible for this, and named people accountable for the 3 different sectors, these young people would have a fairer chance of reaching their true potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warner, and well done for the timing. Has anybody got any comments to make? Any members? Or questions?
That's all right, I can get.
No? Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's very interesting what you raise, and it is something that I remember discussing on here a couple of times before in that tradition period. And certainly after post-18 is a difficult transition for these young people. And I remember asking a question a while ago about what happens because we were seeing a lack of data in some cases, and I think I was told it's just very difficult to track them. Is that still the case? Is there still work that is being done? I know this is sort of a question asking to the ether almost, but you know, it feels like that's almost a cop-out answer rather than looking at what the issue is and addressing it.
Perhaps, Councillor Evans, we could recommend that we ask for some more information at the next meeting, perhaps, about that area. Yeah? Maurice Byrne?
Yes, I'm just speaking on behalf of Health Watch. We are receiving a lot of reports in support of the argument you're putting. At our regular meetings of deliverers across the whole of Sefton, this comes up quite regularly, and it seems to be a problem, to me anyway, in a lack of listening going on here. That there's a lot of people out there who feel that they're not being listened to, and we need to find a way around that.
Councillor Howard.
Thanks, Chair. This is something that the committee's already touched upon when we listened to the meetings from the CAM service. So I think it's something people on the committee are familiar with. We've already got an education scorecard, so I wonder if there's a possibility to explore bringing data pertaining to the details that the petitioner mentioned into that scorecard.
And would that fit in with what you're suggesting, Councillor Evans? Data on the regular item on the scorecard?
I think it often goes beyond education, because if we're looking at post-18, in some cases you've people who are either going into the workforce or, as it's termed, NEET, or are going into further education, which wouldn't be tracked by the education scorecard in the same way. So I think it would for that post-16 to 18 transition, but I think the 18 to 25 transition would probably need a separate way to look at it.
Just to counter that, just because we don't do it now doesn't mean we can't do it in the future. So, whilst I understand if you're saying that isn't in there now, my proposal is to bring that in. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chair. I'm not having a back and forth. I'm going to people saying a similar thing. It's just to say that obviously I appreciate what you're saying. I don't know if education is the right, as in putting it in a school's scorecard is the right way to look at it, because so many of them have left that statutory education service. That's what I'm saying in that sense, that some of them can be tracked in that way, but we need to look at other ways to track those outside as well. I think we're saying a similar thing.
It sounds as though we're going to be asking as a committee for asking our colleagues in education and other services what information we can get hold of to help us to track 18 to 25-year-olds who have educational difficulties and see how they're doing. Is that okay for us to ask that? And we'll come back about that. Are there any more comments about the proposal that's being made in this petition? What we're being asked to do, I think, is to have a regular item on every of our agendas about this particular issue. I'd just like to say a couple of things, really. We're very grateful to the Voice of the Families for raising this issue and ensuring that we do pay adequate attention to these children and young people. I think we have already responded to some of the requests from the Voice of the Families, and we have made send services one of our 3 priority areas in our work programme this year. But I do acknowledge that that hasn't necessarily given a big focus to the older age group, so I'm grateful to you for raising this. We do recognise that the EHCP process is a very important one, because that's the way we do define and meet the needs of children with particularly complex health and education needs. And we are aware that nationwide there are issues with the process, and we will continue to scrutinise performance in the area. But we do want to make sure that in Sefton's graduated approach that we're looking at the needs of all children and ensuring that all children and young people can thrive, not just those who have an EHCP. That is again acknowledging that you're not necessarily talking specifically about EHCPs, but that's what the item of the agenda was about, the petition. So furthermore, this committee is responsible for scrutinising all services for children, including all school services and care for children and children at risk of abuse and exploitation. Children who are in need, as Councillor Evans mentioned, and young offenders, and the health services like CAMS and midwifery and health visiting. And we format our agendas to ensure that each of those areas receives attention. The Scrutiny Committee usually sets its work programme at the beginning of every municipal year, and ultimately it's the committee's decision regarding what's taken forward for scrutiny. There's flexibility to respond to pressing issues and add items as required to meeting agendas. But I want to make it clear that championing this issue, like any other issue that the committee scrutinises, is the responsibility of all members of the committee, rather than identifying specific individuals who have this as a responsibility to raise it. And it certainly isn't the role of the Scrutiny Committee to publicise names of individual officers. And I think that would be entirely inappropriate. We're here to look at and scrutinise overall issues. And we are very grateful that you have raised this issue, but we're not here to identify specific officers and pick them out as people who have a particular role to play. Parents who are in contact with SEND services will of course have the name of the officers who are dealing with their child's case, and they'll have been provided with details of how to complain if they believe that their child is not receiving an appropriate service. And we would encourage everybody to use that provision. And in addition, if parents do want to contact an officer, then we have individuals who put their names forward as heads of service. So Ristard Hare here as Executive Director of Children's Services, and Kerry France, who's Associate Director of Quality and Safety Improvement at NHS Cheshire and Merseyside. In addition, we've talked about making data about 16 to 25-year-olds EHCPs as part of the general scorecard, which Councillor Roscoe would present on a regular basis at every meeting. And we have just undertaken to go away and ask what further information we can get about this area. I would just say as a reminder that if you feel that the escalation process isn't working for you, you have got the right to go to your ward councillor, who can also raise the issue with the relevant cabinet member. But I'd like to say to everybody, and that's not just about this particular issue, but in general, it's not appropriate to be trying to make contact with individual committee members to raise particular issues. We're not here to look at particular cases, and we're here to act as a committee, not as individuals to deal with your issue. The person to deal with your issue is your ward councillor if the complaints procedure isn't working for you. So that's what I have to say, really. But thank you very much indeed for your time and for bringing that to our attention, and we will be looking further into it. Item number 5, we have a second petition. And this is for Ms. Julie Hennessy, who's here tonight, I hope, to present the petition to the committee and say a few words.
Hi. I'm here today because I'm asking, can we have a system that's easier to address the scrutiny committee to the public anyway? To come here tonight, I had to get 25 signatures of residents of Sefton. As a parent carer, that was difficult. I took a chance, I tried with change and put it out into the community and asked people to complete it. I think when I submitted it, I had 39 signatures, but they then got bounced back because they weren't from Sefton, some of them, so some people had put a false address in for their own privacy, so that was bounced back. So then it came back to me again, and I put it out again and said, please sign it. Somebody felt so passionate, they actually paid for a boost on the petition. I ended up with about 200 odd signatures, so it then got resubmitted, and then it was kind of, yes, we got those, and I had to wait again to see whether I would qualify to speak in front of you, and then it was decided I could speak. So here I am today, just asking, is there a better system than this to address scrutiny? According to the, let me just get the right guidelines, the LGA guidelines, there's a councillor's handbook, and it suggests each council sets up a suitable system for the public to ask questions at the scrutiny committee meeting. So I've interpreted that's Sefton's way, that's the way you want it, and it feels like you're making the public jump through hoops, especially the public who already got a lot of care and responsibilities or vulnerable people that they're looking after, and their time is really precious and it shouldn't be spent on this. I spoke to Blackpool Council today, so Blackpool Council were the first of the 24 North West local authorities to have a commissioner instructed due to persistent serious failings. We were the second local authority, and I asked them out of interest, how do the public address scrutiny? They said they fill in a form online, no petition, fill in a form online and submit it 24 hours before the agenda is put out there, and then that person is either allowed to speak, they allow up to 5 people 5 minutes to speak, or again, this meeting being at 6 o'clock with children or vulnerable people that you're caring for, it isn't great. I've submitted another petition to ask, can this please be live streamed? It's hard to attend this. I've asked, can it be live streamed so that more people are able to access what's happening within Sefton? Because at the moment, personally, I feel like it's a closed book for scrutiny. I feel like you don't want the public here. You're making it difficult to ask questions. And obviously we have been told, I should say, to be fair, I was told we could approach a counsellor and ask them to ask questions for us on our behalf. But we're our child's expert. We're the people who need to speak for them. We don't really want, I don't want a mouthpiece of somebody else to ask the question and possibly get it wrong or not be able to convey what I'm actually trying to say. So I just think we would be really grateful if you could look at a better system for the public to ask questions at the Scrutiny Committee meeting. David Moorhead, Voice of the Families, he did submit a petition at the last meeting in September. 8 weeks later, we still haven't got a detailed explanation as to why there isn't another seat at the table. We've got one parent governor here tonight, and this proves the point that Cheryl. Listen, there isn't another person than parents. We need people from all ranges of all abilities and Senate experience to speak and to help formulate the policies and things that are going forward within Sefton. I would understand your prerogative on it if the local authority was performing well, but in a local authority that's been failing our children since 2016, I think it shouldn't be a question of red tape and bureaucracy. It needs action now. It needs people to put their heads together and bring about change. Wise men once said, if you carry on doing the same thing time and time again, you will get the same results. And I feel like that's what's happening within Sefton. We need to mix things up, we need to change, and we need to be embracing that change. The Commissioner came in January, Paul Boyce, and he said transparency and collaboration will win. They will bring forward Sefton. We want this. We don't want Sefton to be taken over. We want Sefton to be a great local authority where our children can thrive. But we've got to listen to that Commissioner. He said transparency and collaboration will win. I can't see that happening. I can see that we're being closed away. Things in this room are getting taken behind the scenes. We'll discuss that later, send you that in an email. We never see the results of that. That's always away and hidden. Again, collaboration, we've tried. Please, can we work with you?
I'm afraid that's your 5 minutes. I'm really sorry.
Oh, glad you can.
Can I just say that later on in the agenda we'll be addressing the first petition that David Moorhead brought.
Okay, good.
Okay. But meanwhile, members, have you got any comments to make? Councillor Evans, you're on form tonight.
Thank you, Chair. It's probably not a surprise to any of the councillors sat around what I'm going to talk about, which is live streaming. I have mentioned this, I think, on 4 occasions at full council. I've called for it in motions, in amendments, I've called for it in questions, I've gone to the press about it, and I think what the petitioner has just mentioned highlights again the necessity to look further into that system. I'm still not convinced with the answer that I was given months ago on live streaming that was pushed to the side, I think that there needs to be a way to ensure that members of the public can see what we do in this building and in other council buildings, to properly see and scrutinise us and how we're performing as their local councillors and their local authority. What I would say as well, and I don't mean to go political on it, the biggest mistake that has happened in terms of local government in the last couple of years was when the then Secretary of State prevented attendance of online meetings. In the lead up after COVID, when the regulations were changed to prevent online attendance, was the stupidest decision I've seen a cabinet member make in a long time. The fact that our colleagues in other parts of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland, are able to attend these meetings virtually and are therefore available for members of the public to watch virtually. It is a crying shame that the government decided to ignore that to force us into attendance. So that's what I would say on that.
Councillor Carlin.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for the petition. Something that we have been speaking about as chairs and vice chairs of this committee and other committees is how to be more transparent. As part of that exercise, we have met informally to look at ways in which we can make it more open to the public, including a cost exercise of how much it would cost the local authority to live stream that. I haven't got the answer specifically to that today. That is still undecided as far as I'm aware, but it is something that we all as chairs unanimously agreed that we do need to be more transparent on, so we can offer those assurances. And in the interim, we are also looking at ways for this committee to be more transparent and work and engage formally and informally with members of the public and those with that lived experience as well.
Do we have a date for that? Is there any kind of time scale? Because again, it feels like everything's in the future and being discussed.
I'm very reluctant to give a time scale. I'm sorry, I made the mistake of giving a time scale in response to Mr. Moorhead, which I couldn't then keep. So, sorry. Has anyone got any other comments? We've talked about this, as Councillor Carlin said, over the last few weeks a lot. We've been in meetings and doing various exercises. So, however, while we do appreciate the concerns that you've raised, I think it's very important for us as a committee to offer some clarification and explanation on our role as a review and scrutiny committee. Because your petition is based on what appears to be a bit of a misunderstanding of the role of the scrutiny committee. It suggests that the committee is responsible for making decisions and providing services. And actually we don't do either of those things. We scrutinise decisions and policies, and we do look at services, and we make recommendations, but only recommendations. As you said, if residents of Sefton have got opinions about decisions that are made or policies that are set, then you can take that up with your ward council, and that's the place to address those issues. As Councillor Carlin said, we are committed to engaging more appropriately and transparently with groups and obtaining their views. The Centre for Governance and Scrutiny have suggested that the most appropriate way that we can do that is via working groups or informal meetings, and we have been having more informal meetings and working groups and meeting people on that basis to collect their views. We've been doing that on various aspects of SEND. So bearing in mind those comments, we'd like to make it clear that we're committed to culture change that Sefton's Children's Services is currently undertaking, and this does include reviewing how well we engage with the public and stakeholders. And with Democratic Services, we're evaluating the Scrutiny Committee's terms of reference and how our informal working group engage with the public for the purposes of the committee. And we are committed to making the process more accessible, and we're exploring options around this issue, and that does include looking at whether live streaming is something that can be achieved here, given the particular circumstances in Sefton. But your petition will inform all those decisions and discussions. And in the meantime, you know, you're right that we have got the petition route, and I'm sorry it's not ideal, but we do have that route whereby people can get access to speak directly to this committee.
Missing the point. Missing the point completely. Well, Jimmy,
Thank you both for your time and the thought you put into your petitions. It's time now for agenda item number 6, which is Cabinet Member Report. Can I invite Cabinet Member for Children's Social Care, Councillor Rostow, Cabinet Member for Education, to introduce their update reports on the agenda. Councillor Doyle first, please.
Thanks, I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Bruff.
Thank you, Chair. The report on page 19 touches on the academy, and our 13 graduated students, which is great. Can you tell me how many of those 13 you've been able to retain?
Both Diane and I went to the graduation ceremony at Lakeside this past Friday. It was a wonderful event. It was, they were so enthusiastic. They got certificates. We had a wonderful woman called Iris Benson speaking to us, who was truly inspirational, and speaking to our newly graduated social workers. They are so happy to be in Sefton. They've all got different jobs. I spoke to one who's gone to the team round the school in Mules Cop. It was just a fab event. It was great. We've retained them. I think there's 2 that have gone. One for personal reasons, and the other one because she moved.
She's moved to Guernsey.
Yeah, she's moved to Guernsey. It's a bit of a long way to come to work. But we still have another 12, is it?
Yeah, we've got another 12 who are going to graduate from the first year of the academy. That will happen between now and the end of March. And then we've now recruited the second year of the academy. So there's a further 16 newly qualified social workers. We could have easily doubled that, but actually we probably wouldn't have had vacancies for them to move into. So there's 16 new ASYEs who've newly qualified social workers who started in the academy. We've also now made fresh links with Frontline, which is a fast track social work programme, national programme. We've got 2 units. That's a further 8 potential social workers who we've now recruited, and we've also renewed our links with Step Up to Social Work, which is another fast track to social work programme, and that unit starts in January or February with another 3 or 4 social workers. We've also got 4 new apprentices for social work. So the academy from next year will be fully staffed again with ASYEs. I think I must say it was a really good forethought for Sefton to do that. I know it was very unique. I know no one else was doing it. It's now being replicated not just regionally but nationally, and it's brought a real sense of people who grew up in Sefton, want the best for Sefton, but been developed by Sefton. And it's significantly reduced our reliance on agency staff. So it has been, it's not been perfect, these things never are, but I think for Sefton, I think it is something that we should celebrate as a council. It's real forethought, it's supported by members, and it's been a really good endeavour.
Thank you, Chair. Delighted.
Councillor Carney and then Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. It was just, there was a mention of the early help offer, and it's mentioned when we visited Leeds to learn more about how they've set up their front door. Can you talk us through more what the differences are between our front door and the Leeds model, and is this in relation to the Leeds family model?
Right, I know of that, I know a bit about this, but I'm going to refer back to Restart for the technical, but instead of being a paper-based system where people phoned up, we wrote it all down and then it got transferred to an assessment team, this is going to be more of a phone call and we'll do the triage during the phone call. But he's the expert here, not me.
The front door, it's based on the work of Professor David Thorpe. It's called the conversational model, and there's what we're going to need to see with the detail. But in basic terms, currently what we do, as a number of other local authorities do, we have a paper-based referral system. So if a professional or even a family have got concerns, they make a written referral, it's passed through to the integrated front door. Lots of people gather lots of information, and then a decision's made on something called a threshold document. There's a family tier 1, universal services, tier 2, early health, tier 3, targeted early health, or statutory services in tier 4, child protection. And then that process happens, and then family is passed on to that support. What we're moving towards, and what we're moving to by age score, I'm hopeful, is it's not rocket science. Is if you've got a concern about your child, or you're a professional, you've got a concern about a child who needs support, you pick up the phone, you speak to a social worker. It's that straightforward. What we're moving away to that bit, where you're having actual conversations with actual people, which is a rocket science. The second bit, and the most important, is that we stop labelling families as being the thresholds of need, and we identify what support is relevant for that family, for that child, there and then, rather than this labelling of families as numbers. So it moves us to a conversational, more empathic, compassionate approach to speaking to families and speaking to professionals, but also what we're hopeful it does, and looking at what's happening in Leeds and in Bradford, it gives the family the right support at the right time for the right child. I have to bring it down. I think it is a good first step for the way that we want to work with families. I'm not saying we're there yet, but the way we want to work with families, which is listening to the family, placing the needs of the family at the centre, and being much more responsive in terms of the support.
Just to follow up then, you obviously mentioned about them receiving a phone call. How would that in practice work, given the scope of how many referrals we get in a day?
That's a very, very good question. So this is not going to be a thing in the air. We've looked at the numbers, we've looked at leads. It's going to involve extensive investment in that service. So that's what I've been discussing today. There's a number of, there's different bits of work that we need to do in Sefton before we get ready. There's a number of contacts that are made that don't need to come to statutory services. One of the mistakes that I think we made a number of years ago was saying that if families needed any type of support, or any level of support, or professionals, then they'd need to be referred to our integrated front door. What we need to do is create accessible, multi-agency support within the community. So this piece of work on the front door goes hand in hand with our creation of family hubs. In very basic terms, what a family hub is the experience of the families if they need some housing support, if they need some support around jobs, if they need some support with their child. Currently, you can be passed to numerous different agencies. What we are looking to create is that we've got a wealth of family wellbeing centres within Sefton. It's turning them into family hubs, multi-agency, multi-professional agencies based at those centres. So the families don't need to be referred in, they can see that they support themselves without the need for the state to get involved. What we're thinking is that will significantly reduce the number of contacts that come in. Based on the numbers, once that happens and we separate early health from the statutory services, we're putting some investment into that for the first 12 months, so it significantly double increases what we've currently got, and then reduce it going forward. So it is going to involve a significant investment, which we're going to be doing, but also it goes in hand with the family hub model. I hope that answered that question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Barry, as well for the report. On page 21, there's a discussion about placements, and there's part of it that mentions step down into foster home. And it reminded me that a few months back we had quite a public campaign around recruitment of foster carers. I remember you went to a couple of events. And I was just sort of curious as to how sort of few months back from it and sort of looking at a bigger level, wasn't that campaign a success? Do you feel it did recruit more foster carers? Are we looking in a better position now with that to help placements going forward?
You know, foster care is really sort of close to my heart because I seem to be the voice of Sefton foster care on Snelly's programme anyway, you know, because I've been on it several times now. We have recruited more foster carers, and I was very privileged to sit in on a fostering panel a couple of weeks back, and what that showed me was the amount of care that goes into actually bringing our foster carers on board. You know, the level of what's the word I'm looking for? The way that we look at their backgrounds, the amount of information that we get from them. It's not an easy process for people to do. So people that actually end up coming to the panel, you know, I've been through an awful lot of I suppose sometimes it could be viewed as quite intrusive information about their family background and their lives. But we have to do that because it's really important, because these are our children. Having said that, the fostering panel, it was very, it was a happy event, you know. I came, there was 3 ex-social workers on it. There was somebody who had grown up in a foster home. Well, our parents were foster carers. There were 2 of our experienced young people on the panel as well. And the thing that I liked about it was they got all the information sent to them. They then sent back lots of questions. They decided as a panel what they were going to ask. The person came in with their social worker, and the social worker was interviewed previous to the individual or individuals coming in. They were asked these questions by the panel. They all went out. They decided what the outcome was going to be, and they were back in within 5 minutes. So it wasn't a case of coming before this quite daunting process and then going away and waiting for 3 weeks to get a letter to see if you had or hadn't been successful. So from that perspective, I thought it was very good. We've done a launch with Knowsley and Liverpool on a new fostering campaign. It was about, 6 weeks ago. I'm not sure how many extra people we have in now, but I know that our foster carers are extremely committed people, and we're lucky to have them.
So straightforward.
Councillor Evans, can I suggest that we ask Councillor Doyle to perhaps bring us some more information about the progress of the recruitment campaign and the numbers of foster carers currently. Thank you very much. Yes, I have noticed you, Councillor Page, but first we've got Councillor Springer, then Councillor Howard, and then you.
Thanks, Chair. This is in page 2 of the report under the budget section. Under the financial forecast section, it says a further review of demand will be undertaken, and then in the second sentence, the service is starting to stabilise. Can I just ask a clarification? Is that has the review of demand being undertaken, or is there further review being undertaken?
So, what page is that? Page 19?
It's page 19, yeah. The second page of the report.
So there has been that's basically the meeting I was at before this. So it was looking at where we are, potential overspend. So we reviewed the demand. The demand in children's services has significantly dropped. And if I can talk about, and I hate to use phrases such as this, so I'm not going to use it actually. So when we look at the numbers of families our children's social workers are working with, If we look a little over 6 months, maybe 8 months ago, across the piece, if we looked at something like assessment services, the average was 47 children per social worker. If we look at localities, the average was high 30s, low 40s. If we looked at children with complex needs, which has just been reviewed very recently in the monitoring visit, the average was 47. The average number of children that our social workers are working in assessment now is 16. The average number in localities is between 18 and 21, and in children with complex needs it's now dropped down to 17. It needs to go further down, without a shadow of a doubt. The danger in reviewing structures and numbers of staff with elevated figures is that you think you need more. My conversations with Chief Exec is that we're now stabilising the children, we're working with the right children at the right time with the right support. That will give me a better understanding of how many social workers I need, how many family support workers I need. I've now got that picture, and we're now finalising what we need going forward. As I said, the numbers are reducing. I'm hoping to look at the number of children in care. People know where I come from. It's about children being at home with mums and dads where it's safe to do so, and that's our next focus. So the demand has been reviewed. We're in a healthy position. I think it's fair to say, certainly where we were 8 months ago. We can always be better. I'm not sitting here saying anything's perfect. It really, really isn't. But I think we're getting to a much more stable position in terms of the amount of families that social workers are working with, and that tipping point with the agency. When myself and Joe Banham started a little over 18 months ago, I think we were looking at 56% for agency staff. By March, we'll be looking at low 20s, if not below that, for agency staff. So the stability is coming, the review is constant, but it is looking positively better.
If I could just follow up on that when we're talking about budgets, and this might be my misunderstanding, but when I was looking at the report talking about heading for a 5 million overspend, and that I think it said that we're heading for that 500 million overspend. If 500 million, 5,000 billion, sorry, 5 million. If care packages that were entered into in 2022 continued for a full year, is that what it was saying? And so hopefully they won't. And then the second thing, if I understood that, was that most of the care packages and placements was most of the overspend, the 3.5 million, and then staffing I think were about 0.66, something like that. I just thought there was a bit of a gap, and I wondered what else was
They are the two main things. Placement, so children being in care in high-cost homes is a significant amount where children's services budget goes on. So when I talk about children staying at home, not only is it better for the child, it's also, if you're looking at financial investment, if you invest more to keep kids at home, it will save you more in high-cost residential or other types of placement. So the placement cost, the home cost in Sefton is the biggest overspend, and that can change very, very quickly. The staffing is slightly overspent at the moment, but what we must all remember is that Sefton is on improvement journey. So we have got some additional resource in to help us improve our practice. For example, we've got independent reviewing officers in at the moment to look at SIM plans. We've got an independent team in working to support and improve our work on the domestic violence and abuse. And I've got some additional capacity to focus on that practice. These are all having significant changes, I would like to think, as I see the audits and quality assurance, but by next year they'll be gone and we will be in a position where we move forward with expected.
Yes, I never thought that you had 500 million overspent, sorry. Okay, back to our queue. Councillor Howard and then Councillor Page, please.
Thanks, Chair. Sticking with the budget, I wanted to ask if that 5 million overspend puts any services at risk for children or young people who are still in material weapons because of that potential overspend.
Within the budget as part of the improvement journey. So that 500 is allow it first of all, but it doesn't have an impact on services for children.
Okay, Councillor Page, last.
Thanks, Chair. I was really pleased to hear Vale's very positive talk about foster care, but my point is about practice week. I was lucky enough to attend one of the days during that practice week period, and as it is in the report, there were family members really helping those, the professional social workers and others that were there really get an understanding of what was the whole purpose of that practice week, which was. And I was wondering if that's going to be repeated in that same format, will there again be a role for family members to help influence and advise us on in that setting?
Yeah, I've already got practice week the next one in March in my diary. I love practice week. I learn a lot from it. I think it's really important that we have our families involved in it. We're also looking to ask two lads that were in care themselves, smashed life, to come and deliver some stuff for our social workers, because I think their story has to be heard and people can learn. Practice week is all about improving the practice of our social workers, and I'm amazed at what I have learned. I've sat in 3 now, and I've learned so much from that, and our practice is improving because I see it every day. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and I know that there are members of the committee who did participate in various activities over practice week, so please let us know what the dates are in March, and I'm sure committee members will take part in that. Okay, I think that's the last then, the whole run of you.
Thanks, Chair. Mine's just a question about the serious youth violence and the statute that's going to come out concerning council lines and drug activity. It said there's going to be a draft coming out this month. I'm just wondering, will there be stuff in that to look at address that? Is the team like set up in our youth defending service or a specialist team to try and pick up this county line of criminal exploitation of young people?
Yes, so Sefton has created its own service for child exploitation focusing on sexual. It's called MySpace. It's a collaborative venture between children's social work, early help, youth provision, the police and CAMS. It's quite a unique service. It's a service that goes out and responds almost immediately to children and young people who are at risk of and or experience exploitation. I'm happy for any cabinet member to come and see the team. It's a very good team, and actually it was part of the most recent monitoring visit. So I can feedback once the letter's published on Ofsted's view of that offer. There's more to do. I think that's something that we can look to integrate into our early help and preventative. And we're going to launch the new strategic priorities for the Safeguarding Partnership next week. And one of those priorities is honour outside the home, which obviously is peer-on-peer violence, but specifically also exploitation, including county lines. So it's a big part of our agenda. It's something that we have set up. It's quite a unique offer, and it's something that I think is very, very good, actually. And it's something I'm happy to bring back further details of this cabinet, because I think the cabinet would find it, committee would find very interesting.
I'm sure we would, so thank you for that offer. Right, I'm going to move us on and ask for Councillor Roscoe's offer. There'll be lots of questions on that.
That's the question, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Evans is particularly first for every item.
I feel like it's my duty. Thank you, Chair. I noticed on page 28 there was a talk of exclusion, which is particularly high at the moment, and I think that probably stood out to everyone. I'm sort of curious, from
your interpretation, do you think there's a pattern and a reason behind that? And I'd also be curious to know about managed moves. Obviously, exclusions are one aspect of it, but schools will try and avoid that if they can and look at managed moves. Has there also been a large number of failed managed moves that have taken place at the same time?
I'd have to come back with you on stats on managed moves, but to explain what it is, it's, you know, sometimes for a child to move to another school, you get a fresh start. You're allowed to sort of start again and leave the unhappiness that was in that school and the behaviours not behind you, and so it can be very, very successful. So we've always used that. The number of exclusions are very high. It is a national picture, but it's very concerning and can't be complacent about it. So what we are doing about it is, well, again, this is something that feeds into our inclusion strategy. So we're getting more inclusion consultants who go into schools, who deliver training from the Behaviour Hub. It's about looking at behavioural policies and strategies across schools to see that our schools are operating with restorative practice, getting in early to try to help prevent those exclusions happening. And most of our secondary schools are involved in that. We also work closely with our PROs, and support school staff to work with a jigsaw to develop skills to basically help to manage behaviours that will lead to exclusion. So it's a multi-pronged approach that will feed into our graduated approach, but it is a national picture, and we are seeing really increased complex need, SEMH and autism, and but we have to help our schools and our families and our younger people so they're not being excluded. Does that help?
Councillor Spring?
Thanks, Chair. It's actually a further point on to Councillor Evans' point about exclusion. It says further on that it's a significant increase in younger children, including those in reception. I think a lot of us in the committee will agree that children because that will be on their levels throughout their school career. And it says further down that we will be putting a plan in place to address this on the 3rd of November. I'm just wondering, can the committee see the plan, if that's okay?
The EHCPs, a similar one to Councillor Howard about the so what aspect. Do we anticipate that the new caseworkers and the team managers will improve the quality assurance of the EHCPs, and will we see any, after, and obviously it mentioned the transition period that we're going through at the moment?
So you've seen we're expecting a dip in the number of EHCPs that will be completed within the 20 years. Reviews, which are statutory reviews for ACPs around the sort of transition period to year 7, a 6 I should say, year to 7, to make sure that those children go into the places that is best for them, that the parents want. So that's where that comes from. What else? Equality. We do have an EHCP equality toolkit. I'm extremely keen that we shouldn't just be always saying 50% or 40%. There has to be equality in it, and we have to work on that, and we appreciate that, and there's always more to do. We should have, by January, I think it's 19 and a half officers, whatever it is, part-time. So there will be an increase in the number of send officers that we have. Anything else? Do you want to add anything to start?
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that this is an area of real focus. I think we've basically doubled the workforce. I'm not saying that that's everything that will improve, but hopefully when people are trained up properly, that will improve the timeliness, but quality is the key thing here. Too many parents I speak to say, yes, we've got the EHCP, but it's made very little impact for me and my children. So the quality assurance bit that we need to embed going forward to make sure it's not just about timescales, it's about the quality and the impact of that EHCP. It is an area, I'm not going to sit here and say it isn't an area, it's certainly an area of development that we've got a real focus on. The additional staff will bring that stability, and again, as I talked about, lower the number of families or number of children that individuals are working with, but that real focus on quality is what we need to be very serious about going forward.
Thank you. And just the second question was, I think it's on page 27, it mentions the Zing pilot. Do you know how long the pilot for Zing will be, and do you know when we can expect to see some results from this pilot?
I don't know how long it will be, but it's still a bit of a chance, but it isn't even just a pilot, it's a full sort of like a academic study along with Edge Hill, so we'll be able to measure a package of it. Loads of schools have signed up, they're really, really excited about it, and we all are, aren't we? Do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, it's been led by a member of our virtual schools called Tabitha, who's ex-teacher, I think, herself. Senko, very passionate, very intelligent, a great addition, great work for our team. We're saying pilot, but I think anecdotally the results are already so positive. It's an absolute no-brainer for us. So, but the initial idea was that it's going to be for a year, but it is being externally evaluated, so it's not just me saying it's brilliant. But anecdotally, the feedback we've had from schools and children has been extremely positive. It's a very exciting initiative, and I do think it would be something the committee would want to hear more of. And I know I keep saying this, Judy, but I'd like to keep you all informed, and maybe useful for Tabitha, who's the real expert at this, to come in and speak to the committee. Happy to do that in committee, or happy to offer something outside.
And again, on that, we did do a sort of a mini pilot with the Old Queen piece. That was really, really well received. And you have to do them every day. But the children themselves were saying it's really helped me finish my task quicker. So when a child said, I want to do this, it's really good.
Councillor Richards hasn't had a chance to ask a question yet, so we're going to let Councillor Richards ask the last question of this session.
Okay, page 28, exclusions. I noted that there is an exceptionally high exclusions and also the underage group as well. And you'll be putting a plan in place. I wonder if you could sort of elaborate a bit further on this as to why they're referring to the exclusion. That's an question.
The actual reason is something that we actually delve into further and find some sort of common threads about it. As I said, we are finding, children in reception being excluded. It is a combination of things, just for fancy it in more detail. It is probably around children with a more complex needs, high sort of levels of SEMH presenting in schools, and I would say as well that schools are not always with the behaviour policies being able to deal with that. So
and they're permanently excluded. They just
they probably do is get tutors, like an EA's house package, like my kids have got because of that. And they'll get tutors, but then that brings all the private vouchers in and the profiteering.
And it all fits into as well our inclusion strategy as well.
Thank you both for your reports. I think, committee, we have been offered some more information and subsequent meetings on exclusion and the graduated approach in the early years. Zing pilots, did I get that right? Early help hubs and the progress of those, and quality assurance of EHCPs. Is the committee minded and happy to accept all of those additional reports in future meetings. I'm very pleased that we're going to have something additional on EHCPs, which will, I think, partly go some way to address the concerns that are being expressed to us. So thank you very much. Let us move on. Oh, and it's just been pointed out to me that Practice Week is on from the 18th to the 22nd of March 24. So if we'll put that in our diaries and get ready to go and learn about improving practice in children's services. And while we're on that subject, let us look at the Children's Services Improvement Plan programme, which is agenda item number 7. So can I invite Mr. Wistard here to introduce the item.
Yeah, I think it's saying about the monitoring visit that's in place. So, as part of our improvement journey, just for everybody in the committee, we, after being found inadequate as the children's services, you have a programme of what's termed monitoring visits that are undertaken by Ofsted. These are like mini brief inspections. They take place over the period of 1.5 days, but there's lots of investigation and reviews that take place before that site visit. There's a number of things that they look at. What they tend to do is pick them on some visit based on the significant areas of weakness that they identified in the original ILAC inspection I was doing in February 2021. We had 4 monitoring visits so far. The first one was on the front door. That's an unpublished letter, so it isn't available. The second one was on health and protection, that was published. The third one was on permanence, looking at children looked after, and going through the journey of a child in Sefton Children's Services. Again, that was published. And our fourth one was on something that they termed vulnerable children. The areas that they looked at in our monitoring visit was children at risk of exploitation, be that sexual or criminal, children missing from care or from home, management of allegations against professionals, the LADA, local area designated officer, private fostering, our offer for children or young people who are homeless aged 16 and 17, and a real focus on children with complex needs, what Ofsted call children with disability. All I can say at this point, unfortunately, is the visit has taken place. We're now in the process with Ofsted about the publication of the letter. Due to it being over the Christmas period, it's going to be quite a delayed publication of the letter. The date I've been given is the 12th of January, which is a significant period between the visit and the publication of the letter. In fact, we'll probably be due another monitoring visit a number of weeks later. So I can't, unfortunately, discuss it in a public arena.
We wouldn't expect you to say anything until it's in writing, because otherwise we'd all be getting ourselves into
Well, they do the visit again, so that's not definitely not doing that.
Okay, thank you for that. If there's nothing else, does anybody have anything that they wanted to ask Mr. If not, we'll move on. And I'm very pleased to invite Ellie Moulton to introduce the Special Education Needs and Disabilities Joint Commissioning Plan.
Thank you very much, Chair. Committee has the report, which has previously been to Cabinet back in June, but this report starts out by introducing the duties that we have under the Children and Family Act, the legal duty to work together as education to make sure we are able to support the right sorts of services, wonderful services in line with identified needs through EHCPs. So the Council and NHS Place team need to work together to make sure we're offering an integrated SEND provision and that it reaches across those service areas. We've got an obligation to make sure we work together to improve how we identify need, and it builds on significant joint strategic documents from the Cheshire and Mersey level, from the integrated expectations and legal obligations, from our Sefton Place delivery plan, from our own council health and wellbeing strategy, and from the agenda of our public health team as well in terms of health inequality. So we are required to base this on the 2023 or the most recent Joint Strategic Needs Assessment, which is produced based on the data intelligence from across health and social care and other bodies in terms of need. It's also based on the Parent Carer Forum survey. So a joint commissioner strategy needs to address the whole system change and also detail how we will allocate resources jointly to make sure we meet those. So in developing our 2023 to 2026 joint commissioning strategy, we went through a number of steps to develop it. It was led by a steering group of representative stakeholders from across health and social care, from the commissioning point of view and an operational point of view. So that included representatives from directly from health services. It includes our officer, was a really key part of our group. We reviewed the previous strategy to understand what had been achieved and what worked well, to understand which hadn't been achieved as we'd wished, and things that were still outstanding. We looked at our partner strategies, such as the Education Excellence Strategy, the Children and Young Persons Plan, the Emotional Health and Wellbeing Strategy, and the Cheshire and Mersey Joint Forward Plan. And we, as reference, we used the JSNA as our evidence base, but we also thoroughly reviewed the last 4 years of the Parent Carer Forum survey to make sure we were capturing all the things that we needed to capture in order to set out how we propose to deliver services across the need. We also made sure we did a thorough review of best practice and made sure we referenced that and cross-checked that against the documents. So you'll see the report gives you an overview of what's included in the strategy. It's built around 4 key priorities, around raising the aspirations for our children and young people, making sure there's a comprehensive offer of support which is accessible to our local community, making sure that there's the opportunity to provide support at the earliest opportunity, and to work with families to make sure we're maximising the choice and control available. It includes an overview of a delivery plan, which provides more tangible actions of how we propose to achieve that. So it references some of the things we've discussed tonight, like the Delivering Best Value Action Plan and the work on the graduated offer, the ambition around early personal health budget and how we make sure we use that as a tool to increase choice and control, how we increase early access to speech and language therapy, and we work with our schools to make sure we're equipping the education system as to how to a commitment to make sure we raise awareness of STEM and the need for STEM in general to help promote equality of access and universal services. How we propose to integrate integrate the front door for access to STEM services, and how we want to improve access to mental health support in schools in general and across and continue to work to improve the access to CAM services. We also detail the opportunity made available to us through technology-enabled care and our commitment to make sure we are making that as accessible as possible to our children and people with SEND, and making sure that that's a key part of the offer at large. We also talk about how we'll try and purchase SEND services as effectively and efficiently as possible, so making best use of regional frameworks, for example, where we can achieve best value and access best quality of services. We've talked about making sure we've continually mapping SEND services and we fully understand those gaps and what we then can put in place to address those. We reference the SENDIAS service and our recognition around improvements to that model and the ongoing work to remodel how we deliver SENDIAS. And we talk about quality assurance of send contracts, so to make sure that we set up contracts the way we want to, but also we're revisiting that to make sure that the experience of using those services is what we would expect, and the right national regulation standards, and also the standards that we would hope for through our ambitions. And we also commit to work on developing framework in partnership with our Sefton Preparing Care Forum to make sure that it's a truly meaningful outcomes framework. And we've had lots of great discussion around dashboards, but the idea is that this outcome framework will sit alongside the data reflection of how we're doing and how it feels to experience those services and whether we're realising the efficiency. So last year, the process we've been through to arrive at it, they're very happy to.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Councillor Spring.
Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Evans, I'm sorry, I didn't notice you. You have to go second this time.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for bringing that update. I thought it was really good, the objectives, and I really enjoyed actually reading the report. But whenever I hear a change, and I know we do need to change because of the improvements that need to be made in children's services, I just start thinking of how much is it going to cost, and is this going to be value for money for Sefton residents? So can I have it, and that's one thing I couldn't see, is where is the value for money that's going to come in this? And can I just raise a second point? The last point that you made about data, I really appreciated that. So would there be regular updates to the committee regarding any data on this? Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm very happy to keep coming back with the data, and I think it's a really valid point in terms of best value. So the strategy as it stands doesn't include a fully costed resource allocations plan, but that is something we're working on that. So again, that's possibly something to bring back in the future. But very much linked to the work I think that Krista detailed earlier around how we manage the capacity demand as a whole for the budget. And again, I think what's detailed in that strategy is a lot of things that are the right thing to do, as we talked about earlier, about early intervention and prevention, but also cost less than waiting for that crisis and putting in that high cost service. But in terms of putting those figures, etc., that is a work in progress, but again, really happy to bring back that detail.
Thanks very much. I've seen you, Maurice, but I'm going to take Councillor Evans first.
Thank you, Chair. This was a really interesting read, and I think in light of what we have been hearing earlier on today, I think page 58 on the agenda overall, and page 15 on the report, is really interesting about what our children and young people and their carers have told us. Because it highlights a lot of what we were discussing earlier on, whether that's post-18 or different aspects. One of the things I'm curious about specifically, there's a discussion on there about training needs that were highlighted around ASD, FASD and neurodiversity. I was curious, are those training, is that going to move forward and be put in place, and is that training specifically aimed at?
Yes, that's a quick answer. I've been working, very much supported and guided by a parent actually in the community, certainly around FASD, who's put me give me a really good connection with somebody. So we're going to be working certainly in terms of FASD, work with a national organisation to train our social workers first of all, and offer that training wider within the council. And we'll be offering further training packages within the services that we work for. It is an identified need. It has been something that's been, as I said, supported by a parent in the community who's communicated with me directly and put me in contact with an expert, I think it's fair to say, in the field. And we're going to be working alongside certainly something like FASD. But there is an identified need for a specific training package for those social workers and family support workers who work with children with these areas of development.
Maurice, would you like to
Yes, we've had a lot of interaction with the residents of Sefton over the Sendias part of this. It's Bernardo's, I believe, that are going to deliver it, is that correct? And the concern is largely around how successful they are at doing that. And they're a great organisation. But the particular concerns are about whether the local knowledge and the local delivery will still exist. Secondly, that it's already operating, I think, in Liverpool and Knowsley. And has there been any parental reports from those trials, if you like, see how effective they are? But at the moment, the impression of carers is that Sendias is a great organisation to provide information centrally, but to get a face-to-face interaction is much more difficult. So there is concern about how it's delivered, and the suggestion is that we need to monitor it carefully. Would you agree?
Thank you very much for the question. So you're right, it has recently moved across to Bernardo's, and as you do highlight, one of the
good at starting strategies but not finishing.
Able and offered services successfully in neighbouring regions. They are a good strategic partner to us in other areas, as you say. I think that in terms of that local knowledge and understanding, obviously that's really critical to them being able to do a good job at that, and they detail that's part of the process around how they make sure they're establishing the right sets of information and networks to do that. But I think it's right to acknowledge that there has been, we have had some concerns raised from parent carers in the borough around that transition across, and we are working with the service to make sure we have a forum for that, so we can have those effective solutions to
If you ban that, you wouldn't have anything to say.
do that with us, so that's part of our role now as commissioners, I think, to bring us together and make sure
Get a point for every time you say it.
it's starting to mobilise and kind of our commissioning team, while it's mobilised, that it does so successfully in a way that's working, and it listens to the people that need it and matter most, which is those that have experience of using it. So yeah, acknowledge what you're saying, and we're really keen to channel that as well.
We are.
Can I just add a rider to that? One of the points that was made was that recently that Bernardo's were going to come and deliver some sort of presentation about the way they're going to operate, and failed to do so. So that creates a problem of trust. Yeah. When change happens, people worry about it, and they are worried about it. So we need to get all sorts of good communication going on as soon as possible.
I'm really sorry to hear that. I wasn't aware of that. I'll make sure that I find out what happened there. I'm sorry to hear that.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report, Ali. The breadth and depth of this report is so huge. Reading through bullet points and topics, broadly speaking, and look at it and think, okay, that sounds like a good idea. So instead of trying to pick out the detail, we can step back and take a look at more of a macro level, and within the context of the Ofsted report, which we've obviously had since the last report was written. So I just want to understand how the findings from Ofsted have informed the content of this report, and well, if they have to start with, and if they have, how, and how confident you are that this report will address some of the findings that Ofsted raised. Thank you.
Obviously, in terms of the joint commissioning subgroup, the joint commissioning strategy has a joint commissioning subgroup which oversees it, which is part of the SEND Continuous Improvement Board. So it's part of that board's remit, obviously, to make sure the improvement work pertinent to SEND is being carried out as we'd expect. So that absolutely should run through the strategy and be clear to see. I think the thing to reference is we have quite deliberately made a lot of the points things that will evolve over time. We've worked into such as developing, committing to develop the outcomes framework in production, for example, as opposed to setting things in stone at the beginning of the strategy, which was quite a conscious effort. So through the leadership of the health centre continues improvement to keep delivering against that and contributing to the regulatory improvement we need to make, and this being a key tool to do that. But equally, we hope to be able to be reflexive to the changing needs and demands that we expect during the life of the 3-year strategy. That's it.
I'm just on page 40, I just wonder a bit more about the personal health budgets and what are the criteria, how to apply, and the families made aware of these. You know, how to go about applying for them.
So, in response, area of expertise that we're looking to, I might, if there's anything I need to recognise, I'll have to with the detail on that, but my understanding is that it has been a legal obligation to be offered a personal health budget as any part of your health element of your education, health and care assessment. So everybody should have the offer to take that up. I think for us really it's about developing the support to enable people to get the most out of what that means. So personal health budgets should work very similar to direct payments in social care, whereby it empowers the individual and their families to purchase a different offer than may be available through commissioned services, so that person can use it to pay for whatever they believe they can link back to showing will make a positive impact on their health assessments. So everybody should be offered that as standard, and it should be making a difference. I think for us it's about how we support people. So for example, working with the carers centre to be able to act as a kind of an advocacy and a body that supports and helps people to use them and manage them as well as they can, because it's not as straightforward as it might seem. I think that's probably as full an answer as I can give based on my knowledge of it, but happy to take any questions away if there's more information.
I think Councillor Roscoe is going to offer us some additional information.
Yeah, at the September 7th Continuous Improvement Board, we had a presentation from Cheshire and Merseyside about personal health budgets with the case a study of where they proved really successful, so that a mum was able to get an agency to get the carers that really supported her child. So for the first time she felt she could have some, a proper respite care. She was in real trouble. So it can be really, really powerful and really I suppose when it's used properly. Once we brought back to board I suppose.
Would like to have more information about health budgets, individual health budgeting? Okay. Looks like we're going to be asking for that, if that's possible. Thank you very much. We've been asking questions anyway about budgeting, so if we can somehow, I don't know if the two would be weaved together or not, otherwise we're going to be asking you back twice, I think. Taking those into... Oh, sorry, Natasha, would you like to round us up?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just on page 69, and it's point 6, where it's talking about developing an effective post-16 pathway. It mentions in particular the educational psychologist service, and work closely with colleagues in the transition process. Now, my understanding is that nationally and locally we do have a shortage of educational psychologists, so how would this strategy deal with this shortage and still ensure that our transition process is enhanced for those in the post-16 pathway?
In terms of education psychologists access, Yeah, I think you're right to raise that, and I think there's a number of services within the action plan where recruitment is an issue. So equally, speech and language therapists, for example. So a lot of the strategy, the delivery plan, is focused on skilling up other people that are involved in that pathway. So, for example, the graduated response pathway that we talked about earlier is all about that. It's about not necessarily relying on that kind of top level of service offer, but being able to build up and skill up the people that might sit around children and young people to be able to recognise needs, address them, meet them before they're escalated to a point where they may have that need for that level of qualification. Similarly, in terms of in terms of, as I said, speech and language therapists, and some of our community and adolescent mental health programs, a similar approach of having more at the front end of the pathway as opposed to relying on it because of that succession planning.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to support what Ellie said, I think what we found in Sefton is how we place the resource down the river, so to speak. So there's lots of additional resource, there's lots of resource downstream where the things happen and we're supporting people after things happen. What we want to get much better at is that early intervention, preventative approach. Part of our Team Around the School initiative that's being piloted at the moment, we have placed an ed psych in one of the clusters of the schools, and we're observing that very, very closely to see whether we put the intervention much earlier. Does that reduce the need for EHCPs? Does it reduce the need for, does it de-escalate the need earlier rather than later? I'm reluctant to say it, but maybe that is something that we can bring into the committee later on. But I think within that, it's people who know me, it's very much about, we've got a lot of resource in Sefton, we just need to move it forward, we need to go it much earlier, and we need to place it where the families are, be that schools, family wellbeing centres or in the community. So we've got these pilots in place, we're looking to see whether they work, whether they have the impact that we think they will have. I think it would be useful for the committee to see it.
Do I take it that it's the committee's wish that we receive an additional report about how the graduated response really is being applied to the implementation of the commissioning strategy and with some budget information slipped in, and perhaps update on sending us as well on how that's going. So there. So there, she says. I would like to move us on now, if that's all right, and move us to agenda item 9, which is equality. So the scorecard was published with the agenda today by email, but you've been emailed an Excel version, and you might want to refer to that rather than the one you've got, just because it's easier.
Yes, so in relation to the scorecard, there's been some issues loading it onto the ModGov system. The Excel spreadsheet and the ModGov system unfortunately didn't talk to each other very effectively. So the scorecard we were bringing to this meeting was the same one that Improvement Board had seen the last time it sat, and the format of the scorecard had altered for the last Improvement Board, not to be awkward, but to concentrate on a number of target setting KPIs that we'd agreed on with the Children's Commissioner. It was also recognising that we were becoming a little bit more adept at accessing that data and presenting it. Sadly, what I hadn't appreciated was that ModGov wasn't prepared to receive it in the format that it existed, so what I'll have to do is work on a way of presenting. So I do apologise for that. What the scorecard highlights, first and foremost, is a number of key performance indicators that are listed at the top of page 108 of the accompanying quality report. These KPIs have been, these key performance indicators have been agreed alongside the Children's Commissioner for voice for 2 reasons. One, they were key performance indicators where Sefton stood out like a sore thumb, to be honest with you, regionally for some time. And they connect to one another, they have a synergy with one another that speaks to what happens to the work that we receive. Traditionally, what happens to work that comes into the system in Sefton is that it's escalated up the system into social care. So, as an authority, we were carrying out a large number of interventions with families at quite high levels that arguably could have been better addressed at lower tariffs, for example in early help. What that does is it creates huge pressure on the system. It exposes families to interventions that they really don't require, and it also creates a situation where you can't kind of see the wood for the trees in terms of the cases that actually do require that intervention. So we've been set targets in relation to those key performance indicators to bring us back at or approaching what we call our statistical neighbour rates, so what a healthier system would look like. What we now know in the last 6 months is that in almost all of these key performance indicators we are heading to where we need to be. What hasn't altered is the amount of contacts we receive, so the amount of times people pick up the phone with a concern about a child remains almost freakishly static. We receive pretty much the same number of contacts about children each month. What has altered is how we process them when we receive them. So before about 6 months ago, we were turning a third of those contacts into referrals into social care, high-level interventions. What we now are doing, more or less uniformly, is turning 20% of those contacts into referrals into social care. That sits us at what the regional and statistical neighbour rate is. And the result of that is it's beginning to calm a system that was running very, very hot. And again, exposing to families to interventions that weren't necessary, and also not really enabling us to focus on the stuff we really needed to focus on. So we're beginning to see the impact of that kind of flow through the system in the last 6 months. So we have at the moment about 715 children subject to child in need plans. That's the lowest it's been for about 2 years. It's been as high as 915, I believe. Next week, if the trends continue, we will probably drop below 300 children subject to child protection planning for the first time in 2 years. That would place us at, again, the statistical and regional rate per 10,000 of children subject to that intervention. We continue to have a very high level of children in care. That number is not as elastic as the other two. Once a child comes into care, it's a significant intervention for that decision to be reversed. We do, and were we at our statistical neighbour rates for that particular figure, we would have approximately 480 children in our care. As it happens, we've sort of identified approximately 100 children for whom that intervention is no longer proportionate. So we're beginning pieces of work to actually step back from that intervention in family life and look to discharge those care orders. That decision is not in our gift, that's a decision of the courts. So that's why that number tends to be
altering the boundaries. They're using statistics.
So that's in terms of what the system is beginning to look like, and what we're
not
able to
taking
do
them on anymore.
a much more advanced way of looking at our
So to
data,
make themselves
also
look better.
kind of disregarding. We went through a phase of kind of being obsessed with the amount of data we could gather about our system. I think we're becoming far more efficient and actually focusing on still a long way to go with that though. In terms of what our work looks like, in the last 6 months we believe, well we know, approximately 20% of our work we have graded as inadequate. The 6 months prior to that, that figure was nearer.
That's the key question, are they using stats to make themselves look better? I think that's a key question for the Commission.
Far more rigorous moderation and scrutiny. They are, really hard. I suspect, slightly pessimistic. 18 months ago when we were
The scorecard is
frantically
different.
looking around all of the work that
Well,
we
how does that
found
one work?
in Sefton.
Yeah.
I struggled to
So
find
it looks
anything.
different, so you're not looking at the same things what you went for.
So we're nowhere near where we need to be, but we can see now the progress that we are making and also understand the reasons why that progress is taking place. So happy to take any questions, and I do apologise for the school. Next time it will arrive seamlessly.
Okay. We've got Councillor Carlin, we've got Councillor Howard, we've got Councillor Spring. Anybody else going to be asking questions? Let's go with those three for the moment. And Councillor Carlin.
Thanks, Chair. It was just on the Excel sheet, which I do obviously appreciate not recognizing both of them. I think it's where it talks about, I think it's number 9, where it talks about initial child protection conferences held within 15 working days. And obviously it says it's fallen by 18% compared to 12 months ago. And maybe I wanted to ask this question as 2 parts. Why is that? And is that anything to do with the partners who are statutorily required to turn up to those meetings?
No, it was I would argue, an artificially high level 12 months ago. And the reason for that was, when you are in a working authority that is so challenging as it was, you kind of get into a command and control mode. And we made a decision that simply every case conference would take place, because if we stepped back from that decision, too many of them weren't taking place. That was great and gave us a figure of 100%, and we stood out like a sore thumb for that too. What that was meaning was that some conferences were taking place where families hadn't been given adequate preparation to prepare for those meetings, or the reports presented didn't allow a fully analytical decision to be made. So we've stepped back from that a little bit. Also, our numbers are less, so what that means is 2 or 3 meetings that don't go ahead have a significant impact on the figure. So ideally we would want every meeting to take place when it should, but there are occasionally times when it's best that it doesn't, as long as a safety plan is in place for the period of time until the meeting can actually take place.
So I think I've forgotten who else was waiting. Oh yes, Councillor Howard and then Councillor Spring.
Thanks for the report, Joe. On the first tab of the Excel sheet, I think it's row 13, which is point number 4 on the report. It talks about assessments completed within 45 working days. That's gone down. The commentary says it's gone down for the past 12 months, and we're at a low rate compared to our neighbours, similar to Councillor Carlin's question. I was wondering, can we have some commentary around why that is, and specifically that in the context of the graduates from the social work academy? Is that going to, what impact is that going to have? Thank you.
Yeah, if there's one figure that has kind of taken up most of our time, it's that particular one. So what this measures is essentially 2 things in one. When we meet a family for the first time and carry out our first piece of work with the family, the clock ticks for 45 days. That's how 45 working days. That's how long we have to complete an assessment. The other thing that happens is after 12 months you have to renew that assessment and do it again, or if circumstances change to the extent that you feel you need a new assessment because the old one's not appropriate anymore. Our figures for families we meet for the first time actually run, for the last 2 months, they've run close to 100%. What's driving the figure down is assessments we have that have been opened, in some cases needlessly actually. We're actually duplicating work, for example, those cases that are in court proceedings. We're actually opening assessments when we're already doing an assessment in the court process. So there's still work to be done. There are a number of assessments that simply aren't completed as quickly as we want them to be. But a family receiving an intervention for the first time in Sefton, for the last 2 months, those assessments, which make up the bulk of our assessment activity, they're completed in timescales almost approaching 100%. So it's now what you would have got in the fully bells and whistles version of this was a little tab you could click on that would have explained that much better to you.
If I can, Chair, that comment commentary would be useful. And also, I don't know if other members of the committee agree. Would it be worth considering splitting those two metrics out? Because at the moment, they're both masking one another, and you're telling us that one is great, that's fantastic, but I just can't tell that. Because if one's great, then one is really, really not good at all. So to get that clarity, I think is really, really useful. Thank you.
Absolutely. And that would have been there had this worked, but I understand next time it will work.
Prevents this obfuscation.
Councillor Spring.
Thanks, Chair. It's not related to scorecard, but actually the report itself on page 108 and 9, and it's just the difference between a deep dive case audit and a dip sample. So when I was reading this, so 38 were graded as requires improvement, and 10 because they had to put in the deep dive. And how many dip samples were undertaken? Obviously, the deep dive is looking at everything. What are you looking at in the dip sample? Sorry if that sounds confusing.
No, it's a good question.
So, when we talk about the audits that attract a grade, and those grades we bring to review scrutiny, there are deep dive audits, and they're significant pieces of work. They involve a forensic review of the case file, they involve a detailed conversation with the case-holding social worker and using the IRS and, if we're able to gain it, and we attempt in every case to do so, feedback from the family involved. We collect all of that to grade and sort of calibrate how Ofsted view things. Now, one of the things we've kind of got better at of late, we're in sync with what Ofsted think. They tend to agree with what we think about our own work. So that bit we've started to have a bit more confidence in. The other thing you're supposed to do with the quality assurance is use it to improve. So a lot of effort goes into being assured that we know where we are, but the more interesting part is actually using it to get things better. And that's about spending a little bit less time looking at specific areas and cases when we do, for example, we call them dip samples or short assessments. Now, we don't have enough information to attach those grades to that, but we're still experiencing to know what isn't right and what needs to be fixed and that. So they're two slightly different processes. Does that make sense?
Can I just give a quick example to give a quick example to show what the difference is with dip sample. So when we look at fault assurance on a monthly basis, what we start to see is the number of assessments closing more earlier. I mean, as the DCS, you can see that's positive, but I want to know more. So I would task the job team to go through dip samples, 50 of those recently closed assessments to be assured that the right decision was made, and that will be a dip sample. So it's a quick look to see whether the right decisions are made on that particular thing. It's also when we do the deep dive, we create hypotheses about why we could think something like, well, speaking to dads when there's domestic abuse, or we're not speaking to mums. And then I ask for a dip sample to say, go and look at the last assessments from GP to make sure that's got to dad. So that's it.
Thank you, everybody. I'm hoping to move on now. So, is it agreed that the committee notes the report? Agreed. Thank you. Plunging right on. I don't have to get up on this item. Oh, the two postponed ones. Yes. Thank goodness there's two postponed items this way. So we are not as far back as I thought we were, and we're able to deal with item number 12, which is consideration of the terms of reference and inclusion of co-opted members of the committee. And Debbie is going to introduce this for us.
Thank you, Chair. So this report has...
Sorry, my Vice Chair is whispering in my ear, which is a bad idea.
Just maybe we should clarify to the committee why the two agenda items are being postponed.
Okay. Can I clarify why the two agenda items are being postponed?
Yeah, I'm pleased to ask. Unfortunately, the member of staff is off sick at work. I know that's a bit of a fudgy response, but we've had a bit of a sickness in the education. She's quite positive before, so I'm slightly kind of regretting that a little bit, but we can bring you a more up-to-date report the next one.
Thanks. It's my fault I missed that page that says here why that is. So, right, we're now up to item 12 and Debbie is going to introduce that for us.
Thank you, Chair. So this report has largely come about as a result of a petition received at the last meeting of the committee. And the petition was from the Voice of the Families and asked for 3 independent people with lived experience to sit on the committee. Members raised a number of issues at the last meeting, and eventually the committee resolved that the petition would be noted and that discussions would take place on the matter. So subsequent to that, committee members met informally to discuss a range of issues really about membership committee, including co-opted members in terms of reference for the committee and how the committee can obtain views of service users. And you heard all about political proportionality and how we come to the numbers on the committee, numbers of elected members. You also heard about that this committee is subject to regulations regarding co-opted members from church representatives and parent governor representatives. And the council's constitution also reflects those statutory regulations. There was discussion on the wide range of council services for children and families that this committee is responsible for scrutinising. Looked at the terms of reference from the council's constitution, and there was a feeling that these could be streamlined to better reflect statutory requirements and priorities of the committee. The Local Government Association that members have received training from have been very keen on emphasising the voice of the child, and it's a matter of how that can be captured. So all in all, it was felt that a review of the terms of reference for the committee should take place, and this would include the use of co-opted members of the committee, and look at the range of means available to obtain views and perspectives from parents and young people. So I'm happy to take any questions or comments, Chair.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Have any members got any questions or comments to make about the report? In that case, is it agreed that the report be noted?
Unbelievable.
Now, move on to our work programme key decision plan.
Is
So can I invite Laura Bukeland, Directing Services Officer, to introduce that?
That's pathetic.
Yes, Chair, this is our
You
programme.
don't know it's a recorder.
Key decisions, whole plan.
Doesn't work.
Oh no, it's legal.